Aderyn wasn't sentimental, but she was still glad the day of Celine's memorial was bright and clear and not rainy as yesterday had been. That would have felt ridiculous, as if the sky knew about the death to mourn with the humans. Aderyn hadn't known the bone mender well, but Celine had been helpful and kind, and it still infuriated Aderyn that her kindness had ended up getting her killed. Her murderer, the secret diabolist Jedrick, had been carried away by the demon he'd summoned to kill Celine. But even the torments he was enduring didn't make up for the loss. It seemed half the city had turned out to celebrate Celine's life. Well, a level 20 bone mender was no doubt a pillar of the community, between her adventures, her achievements, and her magical abilities, so it made sense a lot of people knew and admired her. Aderyn was used to funerals in her hometown of Farhaven. They were usually mournful events, even if the deceased had been very old or very ill and in pain. This was more like a citywide party. Aderyn stood at her room's window and watched the street 3 stories below. She could hear the noise of the crowds even through the glass. Men and women singing and shouting to one another, some of them dancing in small groups. The door of the Horse and Hound Inn never stopped swinging as people entered, looking for a drink or a companion, or left in search of more of that elsewhere.
"You coming downstairs?"
Aderyn didn't turn around. "Doesn't it bother you?" she asked Owen. "It feels like these people just want an excuse to party, and they aren't thinking of Celine at all." Owen entered her room and closed the door behind him.
"Funny you should say that," he said. "In my world, we have holidays, like special annual occasions to commemorate things, that used to be serious and all that, but they've turned into days to party. So I get what you mean. But I think in this case, it's more like them being happy for who Celine was and what she did for the city."
"It still feels strange."
"It's not how your town handles grief, is it?"
Aderyn shrugged. "It's sad when a life ends, even if they get absorbed into the system. Nobody knows what happens then, so it could be something great or it could be awful, and either way, we're just guessing."
"In my world, a lot of people believe there's a part of you that lives on. Maybe it goes to heaven, or maybe it stays around and watches over loved ones, but that means death isn't the end."
Owen leaned on the windowsill and stared down at the street as Aderyn had. "I can't even imagine that. What does that part of you look like? Can others see it?" Aderyn had a sudden vivid picture of shining columns of light drifting through streets, though she'd never seen Owen's world, so her imagination placed the columns in Farhaven. That would send everyone screaming.
"Nobody agrees on that. I don't know if I believe it myself, that there's an afterlife people go to. I don't believe in ghosts. Those are supposedly what happens when the spirits of dead people hang around and scare the living. I guess that means your world doesn't have ghosts, or vampires, or zombies."
"I don't even know what those words mean."
"It's just as well. I always thought people made up stories about the undead because the idea of death not being the end is scary as well as comforting."
Owen straightened.
"Come downstairs. It's dinner time, and we're all going to talk about things that aren't death and sadness."
Aderyn nodded. "I do understand one thing," she said, following Owen out of the room. "I want to remember Celine for how she helped us, and not for how her life ended."
"That's something we can all manage,"
Owen replied. The stairs were too narrow for them to walk side by side, so Aderyn let Owen lead the way. She pretended to herself it wasn't so she could watch him unobserved. In the weeks since they'd discovered Owen couldn't return to his world, she'd watched him in secret often. At first, she'd been concerned that he wasn't doing as well as he claimed, worrying that he might become depressed or angry over his situation. Learning you were dead in your own world couldn't be easy, even if you were alive in this one. Then her watching had become more personal. She'd find herself staring at his hands or his shoulders, or the sharp line of his collarbone where it peeked out from the neck of his shirt. He really was handsome, and she liked looking at him, but she'd started to feel there was more to it than that.